There is room for grace and grief and gratitude all in the same.
Welcome to Currently the Conversation, brought to you by TVC Cherry Capital Airport, your Northern Michigan connection. I'm Christal Frost, and today we're joined by someone many people in Northern Michigan know through her decades of service to our community. Deborah Allen has worn many hats: public servant, community leader, Navy Reserve officer, advocate, Rotarian, and now author. Her new book, Flipping the Bitch Switch, challenges women to reclaim a word often used against them and redefine it as beautiful, intelligent, thankful, charitable, and honest. Deb, it's so great to see you today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, Christal.
I'm just so happy that you're here. I've known you for many years. And, speaking of all those hats that you've worn, I've seen you wear a lot of those hats, and you wear all of them beautifully.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you.
Now, you have spent most of your life, really, serving others. That seems to be deeply ingrained in you.
Absolutely.
When you first look back, what do you think drew you toward public service and leadership?
Well, I'm the youngest of a large family.
Okay.
I'm the youngest of 7.
So you served a lot of people.
I did. Actually, I have to admit, I was probably the spoiled, rotten one for sure. But my parents both came from that mindset of service. Both of them were World War II veterans.
Wow.
So my mother was a wave in the Navy, thus the Navy connection, and my father was lieutenant colonel in the Air Force.
Wow.
And he passed when I was quite young, when I was 14. So that commitment to service was really a way to honor both my parents.
Amazing. Tell me about young Deb. Like, what kind of kid were you?
Very precocious. And to be honest with you, something that a lot of people don't know about me is that I had dyslexia as a child. So to be a writer, to be an author is really surreal, honestly, because I struggled a lot. Now, I was, because I was the youngest of 7, so I was the youngest in a large family where all the adults were talking with a vocabulary much above, where I would be as a child. So I picked up very quickly. So my vocabulary was high or excelled, but my spelling and seeing numbers and things like that was challenged. So yeah, it was very frustrating for my parents who actually had me tested and realized that I had a higher IQ, but I just couldn't do those basic things.
Yeah.
It was very frustrating. They were like, "You're just not trying." And I'm like, "No, I really am." And it wasn't until 6th grade until a teacher said to me, "Have you ever been tested for dyslexia?" And I actually broke down and cried thinking that I had some disease or something.
Wow. Yeah.
And when she told me, she goes, "Oh, no, honey, you just learn differently. You have to take a little extra time to process things, but you're just fine."
Wow.
And I thought, how powerful.
Yeah.
That could have gone so differently. And I think for a lot of people, it has gone differently.
Yeah.
So
yeah, a lot of things that we now know about dyslexia, we didn't know back then. And so, it was probably normal for parents to say, well, you're just not studying, you're not trying, you're not, but it was just a different way of learning. That's amazing. You mentioned your parents as the people who shaped your leadership, your draw to public service. But is there someone in your life that maybe shaped your leadership style?
Wow, I wish I really could lean to one person. My mother was very, very strong, very capable. So I guess I would have to say, because my father passed when I was young and my mother had her own business, she had her own jewelry business, which is why I like my baubles, I guess.
I love it.
So I come by it honestly, but she was amazing. And I guess, thank you for asking that, because I need to give her more credit.
Yeah. And, leadership style, I think it can morph over the years, right? You can kind of start in one way, but then you change and you grow, and then you maybe kind of are attracted to someone else's leadership style, or maybe it fits in a certain situation. I imagine serving in the Naval Reserve was a very different leadership position than maybe moving into nonprofit management, right?
Absolutely. So I think in the reserves, the Naval Reserves, I was what was called an admin or a line officer. So it's a very different structure than, say, a combat officer. Somebody's trained to, kind of go in that path. So I was really doing more of the training, the human resource type related activities. getting the troops ready for readiness was the focus. So.
Yeah. Do you think that leadership is something you've sort of intentionally pursued, or did it just sort of fall into your lap?
I think, honestly, that experience that I had with that 6th grade teacher really set me on a different trajectory, because I really thought, okay, maybe I am just not smart enough. Maybe I just don't have the ability. But when she told me that I just learned differently, it allowed me to think differently. And most recently, I'm very grateful to City Manager Ben Marantet, because he really captured something and saw something in my leadership style and he had stated it a couple times. He said, if Deb had a superpower, it would be clarity.
Oh.
And I thought, you know what? Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to him for that, because sometimes you live every day and you think you see things and you feel strongly about certain things, but is everybody going to feel the same way, or is it going to understand? And certainly with a book that has the title Flipping the BITCH Switch, I'm kind of putting it out there. And I've never done that before, Christal. I've always been the public servant that took the information for everyone else and listened to their voice. And so I'm now finding mine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what you needed at the time. And now you're, entering into this new chapter. Before we actually literally flip to the bitch switch, I have to ask, you've worked in spaces that have traditionally been male dominated. And before the show, we sort of talked about that. Have there been moments where you felt like you had to prove yourself differently than your male counterparts?
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Honestly, when I started in business, I went right from college to grad school. From grad school, I was offered a job at a Fortune 500 company. So,
you were off and running.
I was off and running, and I had done the beauty pageant thing, and I had done a lot of things. And, I had certainly earned my degrees and had the education. But I found out early on that I was not hired for the things that I thought I was. I was not necessarily hired for the education, the experience, the ability. And I talk about that in the book, and it's a delicate conversation, but having been an officer in the military, obviously a woman in a male-dominated position, same thing with the corporate world, Fortune 500 companies, and then moving into Chamber of Commerce work. As an early chamber executive, again, it was dealing with, the banker, the lawyer, the community leaders. And so they were very kind to me. That was a wonderful, wonderful entry when I was a chamber director. It was a really great experience. And that I was a chamber director for several decades, or at least a decade.
Wow. Yeah. I want to hold up the book here for those who are watching, and it's called Flipping the BITCH Switch. And we mentioned earlier that BITCH is an acronym. And what you're really trying to do is to really express to women the need to reclaim this word that often is used against them. And I can tell you, this is definitely a word that I've been called in professional settings. And it stings, and I think it makes you question a lot of things like, oh my gosh, was I being that way? But in reality, it may be that I'm just being honest, and that other people don't see that as something that a woman should be, or that I'm doing things a little differently, or I'm being innovative, or whatever, or I'm questioning something. There's a lot of scenarios, I think, where those kinds of the women get called this name. So you're talking to us about flipping that switch. Literally flipping the word to be something that is powerful and empowering. And so I have to ask you, first of all, where did you get the idea for this? I mean, clearly you have so many experiences, but was it just someday you just went, hey, I'm going to write a book?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, being in positions where I've worked with a lot of other women in those, I'd say, high-profile positions. I've not always been proud of how either myself or another woman has acted in that position. And, I think when you look at the word even the word bitch switch, it means, and if you look at Urban Dictionary on Google, it says when a woman switches to either an angry or irrational, kind of or emotional approach to something.
Emotional, yeah.
And I think, that begs the question, why? Why? And what has flipped our switch? And so, oftentimes, if women are emotional or they are irrational, it's probably because they've been disrespected in some way. And so I think that that's important for us to understand what that current word is. And then rather than us coming from a place of anger, let's come from a place of positive approach to things, thus the flipping. How many times have we women been told that we're not enough?
Right.
And that's society. That's not blaming men or women. It's society as a whole, where we've been told, we're not beautiful enough. We're not intelligent enough. We're not gracious or thankful enough. We don't contribute enough, or we're not charitable enough is the word that I use in the book. But the one word, as you pointed out, that gets women called a bad name more than anything else is when we are honest.
Yeah.
Because we've always been told to be nice. And sometimes being honest is not necessarily nice. It's needed, but it's not always nice.
So at what point, though, did you realize, because I could see this as being a really great keynote, right? I could see it as being, just something that you could travel, which I know you are, traveling around to conferences and you're going to be presenting this idea. But this is more than that. It's like a movement, and you put that movement into a page turner here. At what point did you go, oh, wait, no, this really is bigger than just I could give a speech,
I think that, to be honest with you, when I recognized in a meeting that the bitch switch had been flipped, I actually came back because it was a group of women, and I said, I don't know about you, but I think that flipped to my bitch switch a little. And they all were like, what does that mean? What is that? And I'm like, wait a minute, you don't know what that word is? So anyhow, I actually, just to be funny, created a switch. And it was just like
a physical switch?
A physical switch. And I did trademark it, and I have them for sale. Because I thought, wait a second, there are half of the population, more than half of the American population is women. And if the pet rock could take off, I thought, wait a second here. So I actually made one, and I was talking to my niece, who is a writer, and she said, Deb, you really need to write a book, because I had already done the acronym, and I already kind of created that. And I thought, I was talking to her on the phone. I went, what?
Yeah.
And she said, yes, you need to write a book. And I thought, you know what? Why are you so smart? You're younger than I am. And actually, when I sat there and thought about it, it did make me realize that this is an opportunity to really start a movement, to help women to be empowered, to be engaged. And that ties a little bit into an organization that I'm involved in, which is Zonta International. Yeah. And that is a women's organization. And that word Zonta is an Indian word, and it means trusted advisor.
Yeah.
And so many times women, we're overlooked in this country as being trusted advisors. But statistics show that every boardroom is better when there is a woman on the board.
Yeah.
And so, that's statistics. That's not just me saying
that's science,
that.
baby.
So it's science. It is. And there is a lot of science. And I talk about a little bit of that in the book, about science and about some of the genetic information that's coming out about intelligence and about intuition, and how that's actually something scientifically proven, passed down from woman to woman.
Amazing.
It is amazing.
It really is. I want to start this by saying I really love that you are helping us reclaim that word bitch. But I want to ask you about your decision to do that instead of abandoning it, because I think the knee-jerk reaction for negative words, especially attributed to women, is to get rid of them. We don't want that. We don't want to be associated with that. But I think that there's a lot of strength in, flipping the word and reclaiming it and saying, yeah, I'm proud to be that. So why did you decide to do that? What was that about that word in general where you went, yeah, I think it's time to reclaim it?
I think it was just the reality when I really started to research.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that word is basically the root is for a female animal, female dog.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how did we get here? And I really started to go back and look at how that transition of the word went from being something to describe another being to being, something that, referred to the unbridled sexuality of women and how that was threatening to both men and other women.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think we women need to understand that word is not necessarily just a word that men have used. It is a word that women have used. And Christal, that's a huge component of this book, that we women need to be raising each other up rather than pushing each other down or stepping on each other to get ahead. We don't, as a collective, we don't move forward that way. And frankly, every time a woman degrades another woman, she's lowering the standard for all of us. In fact, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright has a quote that says, there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women.
I 100% agree with that.
And I think that's probably one of the most significant messages that I think that I'm hoping that the book will share is that we as sisters need to support each other, just like men have done for decades.
Sure.
They're the model. They have mentored and brought each other up, and through sports and activities, they have found ways to, to kind of how they work together.
Right.
And we women have not yet really formulated that. I think there's hope for the newer generations. And I'm excited about the things that they're embracing, but it's still a process.
It's so interesting because I want to know about your thoughts on women today who are coming up and just starting their careers, which is very different from when you and I started our careers. And, I know we both have expressed some real challenges in those early years of careers, but do you think that women today face different challenges? Do you think some of the barriers are still there? Do you think that, or do you think there's new barriers, there's new challenges that maybe you and I didn't have?
I think that I'm very encouraged by the newer generations. They have an increased sense of confidence. They're not held by the same standards. I think that so many of us that grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the fashion industry really did a number, I think, on a lot of our generations in the time period. It started back in the 1920s, actually, with the movie industry and how everyone had to be a standard. And, I talk a little bit about Marilyn Monroe being the standard for everything, from the Barbie doll to Tinkerbell, and so that's what we grew up with, is that this sex symbol type of mindset. But what people don't know is that Marilyn Monroe had an IQ that was higher than Einstein's. She
Brilliant.
was an avid, brilliant reader. She was she started her own production company because she was frustrated with the way that she was treated as, and typecast into all these superficial, objectified, position or roles.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so, I talk briefly about that. I also talk about Taylor Swift. How brilliant she is. And how, and so I do talk about the different generations, and I do talk in the beauty component about women today. I think the younger generation are much more comfortable in defining what beauty is for them, whereas women of younger generations, I think, were so tied into what society said they should look like. And even to the point in the 1990s when we were in that heroin chic type of,
I remember that.
And the bulimia, and women were dying because they were trying to meet that beauty standard.
Literally.
And I just think, my goodness, we need to stop and pause and think we are so much more than what is on the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny too, when you talk about women sort of bringing each other up, and I was in a male-dominated field for a long time in the media, and specifically in broadcast radio. And I remember when I was first on the radio, I was a part of a morning show, and I was given instructions that my role for this morning show. It was very, it was a real blue morning show. It was really, we were really obnoxious, to be honest with you. But my role was to be sort of the mom and to oh, you boys, that thing. But I'm a pretty funny person, and I could write really funny things, and sometimes they were over the top and sometimes they were inappropriate. And when I would present myself as that, I would get reprimanded. That is not something you should be doing. That's for the boys to do, not you. And I just remember being so offended, but at the same time, this was, the early 2000s, and that's what it was. And at the same time, you would walk into any station and you would have one woman on every station, usually the midday person. She was usually the only woman on the staff. Or she was the morning show host that was supposed to be the voice of reason. And it was really so women were actually in that industry were threatened by other women. So there was a really difficult time for me to try to get mentorship from other women because they were afraid that we were coming for that only spot, And I think about that a lot. I actually think about that quite a bit because so many of the women I worked with are just brilliant, wonderful people. But because of that industry modeled that as acceptable behavior, that's how, you were alone. And if you walked into a station and it had one woman, that woman was like, oh, she's coming for my job. It's just horrible.
Yeah. So
I think that's changed.
Set up for that kind of an environment where it's so competitive.
So competitive. And I think that happens too. It happens in boardrooms. It happens in corporate level. Happens anywhere, where it's we have room for one woman, right?
Thankfully, I think that's expanding. And you look at the corporate structure now, and there's so many more women in those roles because they're willing to do the hard work. And not saying that men aren't, but I'm just saying a lot of women, they're like, let's give her a chance. Let's, see. And I have a lot of women friends that are amazing executives and amazing leaders. And, but I will tell you the one thing that when we talk, the one thing we all talk about is how that still we deal with that challenge of not feeling that we are enough, even though we have probably reached the pinnacle of our careers.
Yeah. It's still, it's some,
that 12-year-old girl intrinsic. Is still in there and saying, am I ever going to be enough?
I feel like this book is speaking to the 12-year-old girl in all of us, though, really, when it's calling to reclaim things, to have more confidence, in yourself. And we're here with Kevin Klein, Executive Director of TVC Cherry Capital Airport. Where are we going, Kevin?
Well, we have 20 nonstop destinations to choose from. Dallas.
Yes.
I always...
Everybody wants to go to Texas, man.
And Texas is not only a great market for leisure for us, but it's also a great market for business. And a lot of our companies here in Northern Michigan do business in that northern Texas, Oklahoma area, that Dallas is a great nonstop destination. Houston.
Oh, I love it.
Houston will be operating this year nonstop. I love Houston, going down there. We went to the Kennedy Space Center. If you're a space nut, let me tell you, that is a fun tour to go through that facility and see all the rockets.
So many opportunities for all of you to make your summer travel plans right now. Best way to do that is go to
tvcairport.com.
Love it. I want to transition here a bit to talk about something that I've always admired about leaders and people who often you see the public side, and people have seen the public side of you for a long time in many, many roles. But, we don't know the private side. We don't know the struggles that people are carrying. And this has been a season of profound personal change and grief for you following the loss of your husband, Mark. How do you think grief has changed your perspective now on life? And I want to point out, too, that you're wearing a bracelet that was kind of Mark's mantra.
A life well lived.
Yeah. How has that experience changed your perspective?
Well, thank you for asking. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to honor Mark in this way. He truly was someone that lived life to the fullest. And I can remember I'll tell you a quick story. So 10 years into our marriage, and I'm type A, go. And, he was very comfortable in his own skin and, and just kind of like being, he didn't have the need to be at the top of, any list or anything. And I said to him, I really wish you were a little bit more ambitious. And he said, Deb, my ambition is to lead a stress-free life.
Oh.
And I have to admit, I looked at him, Christal, and I said, well, I'm really glad I can make that happen for you. But we had that kind of a real friendship, a real relationship. And he grounded me.
Yeah.
He allowed me to take on these bigger positions and opportunities because I knew that I had someone who was going to have my back. And so it's definitely been a challenge these last few months. Mark was my best friend, my champion. But, there is room for grace and grief and gratitude all in the same. And I realized how blessed I was to have a 37-year love affair.
Oh, yeah.
And so, this book was going to print when his work accident happened. And I know that it is probably the only thing that has given me a sense of direction, purpose. I have to get up every morning and get things going. And I just really feel that he's, I joke, he's got one hand on my shoulder and the other one's smacking me in the butt saying, come on, girl, get going. So he still is with me and still is guiding me. And I have my moments of all three of those, my grief, my gratitude, and my grace is all,
Well, I just thank you for sharing. I know, I was telling you, I think the thing that I find so inspiring about leaders is the vulnerability, and all leaders can show this sense of vulnerability because that's the connector. That's when I'm, speaking to someone who's a supervisor, a mentor, anyone in a leadership role, and they show a little vulnerability, it's so much easier for me to connect. And you do that so well. And you always have. You really always have. I want to look forward with the book right now. And I think one of the best things about this book is that 10% of the proceeds are going to that organization that you're a part of, Zonta International. And it's supporting the ratification efforts of the Equal Rights Amendment, which I'm like, we're still doing that?
Yes, we are, which is just,
wow.
It's shocking to a lot of people. Yeah. A lot of women are like, what? What do you mean we're not equal? And it's like, by the law, the 28th Amendment has not fully been ratified. It's something that's being debated in the courts right now because the required number of states have ratified it.
Right.
But the timeline that was set in the initial document to do that,
which is like 100 years ago or something.
Well, the process started actually, obviously with the suffragettes and everything else. But then in the 70s, this legislation was actually implemented for the ERA. And there was a timeline on how long it would take to get all of the states to ratify.
Wow.
And so it's being debated. At the time, President Biden stated that in his opinion, it is fully ratified, but the record keepers or the archivists have not.
But it's not
stated it. And so, it's still a thing and it still is going to take efforts. And it is a passion of mine to, as somebody who wrote my name on the line on my enlistment, or not enlistment, but when I signed my officer papers and saying that, I was willing to die for my country, the same as any other individual, man, I'm like, how can it be that we're not considered equal? So I am, it's definitely a passion of mine, something I'm committed to. So that's why, also speaking from that component, the C in BITCH is charity.
Charity.
And not just time, talent, and treasure that we often hear about, but I think it's important to talk about how valuable being charitable with your temperament.
Oh, interesting.
And being kind. There is that component of kindness and being charitable of your heart and your spirit. So I have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And I truly believe that 10% is important to be able to give back, to help to bring other women up.
Yeah. So maybe equal in theory, but not on paper yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. I also want to mention too about the book, and we didn't get a chance to do this, but it's part journal for self-reflection.
It is.
I love that.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
It's kind of the book is like the trilogy. It has social commentary, and then it has what I call author's anecdotes, because I was sharing this with some girlfriends, and these women leaders, and they said, Deb, this is really good, but why is it important to you? Like, where are you in it? And I was like,
that's the vulnerability.
I know. And it's like, okay, I guess I have to be real. And it was when I sat down with it and I realized what a gift that was from them to say that they wanted to hear my perspective on things. There are things in there from my thoughts that will make people laugh.
Yeah.
It will make them cry. It will make them angry. All of that, because it's all of it is what we deal with, right?
It is real.
And then the journal component is the opportunity for women to take the time for the self-reflection.
Yeah.
And Christal, my goal with this book is that it'll be the type of a book that lends itself very well to the book club, to a woman's book club.
Oh, I think that would be a great book club.
Absolutely. And I think through Zonta, there are opportunities through that, through college campuses. There are courses that could be, there's just so many opportunities. But I will tell you the one thing that makes me, like, in my head, when I envision the grandmother, the mother, the sisters, the aunties, the daughters, the granddaughters, all sitting together on a cool autumn morning in their jammies and just reading this book and taking the time to answer those questions together.
Yeah.
Like, that just makes my heart full.
And reflect together, because everyone is going to have a different experience, which I think understanding someone else's experience is one of the most important things that you can do to better understand another perspective.
Absolutely.
Right?
Think about the generational healing that could happen from that. The understanding, in my family, being from a big family, we often say the cycle goes unbroken. But if you have these meaningful conversations, the cycle doesn't have to continue.
Right.
Understanding and just that, again, grace that you can lean into to each other to understand where they are. So I'm hoping that this book brings awareness, brings insight, and brings healing.
So I know people have already asked you this, and my goodness, you on July 1st, you have a launch party at the beautiful City Opera House in downtown Traverse City. It's going to include a conversation about the book, about leadership, about resilience, about personal growth. You'll have people have the opportunity to get the book, get it signed, beautiful stuff. But do you have another book in you? People get the first book and they're like, all right, how about part 2?
I suppose you should never say never, right?
Right.
I think that if I were to do a second version of this or something, I think that where the opportunity really lies is in that learning that happens from other women. So when women, and I have an opportunity on my website for people to say, has there been something that resonated with you? And so when women respond to me, I think that's the next story. It's not my story. I've told my story. The next story is, how have women healed again? How have they grown? How have families been impacted in a positive way? That would be, I think, the rest of the story.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. As Paul Harvey used to say, I love it. I have a couple of rapid fire questions here.
Gosh,
so, just don't think too much.
Okay. Oh, geez. That's really hard for someone who overthinks everything.
You've already told us a lot about yourself and you're like, this is not going to work. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about strong women?
That we're really that strong.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
wow.
All of us are really, like I said, we talk about that 12-year-old that's still trying, in high school, that's still trying to, fit in, and that not feeling enough. And we all have our inequities and our things that we, our blemishes that we see in ourselves that no one else would ever see.
Yeah.
But yet, I think it's a matter that we all just have to give each other grace.
Yeah.
Life is hard.
Oh.
Life is really hard, and a woman's life is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
I have a whole philosophy on that anger component when we talk about, it starts when we're 12 when we have our cycle, and then we go into birthing, and our bodies change again, and then we go into premenopause, and our bodies change again, and then Menopause. It's like,
So tired of all of the changes.
yes, we are tired, and yes. And so there is a lot of that. And I hope that that's something that, that girl dads and husbands and, for all the women and the men who love them, to have a understanding that, we go through a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so well said. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Honestly, I think it's probably from my sisters who have just said, be true to yourself. And that's, that's easy to say, but hard to do, especially as a woman, a high profile woman. And I will tell you, Mark also live, a life well lived. And just, don't wait for tomorrow. Some of the lessons that I've learned from him have been the most valuable in his loss. I just honoring him and like I said, leaning into your own grace.
Yeah.
Be gentle.
What's a risk that you took that you're really glad you took?
Putting myself out there.
Is it this?
Yes, it is. Because like I said, my whole life has been that career of public service. Yeah. So I've always been, let me do that.
Behind
take care
the scenes,
of it. Yeah, absolutely. I've not been necessarily the one expressing my opinion.
Right.
And my opinion really was not what was important. It was the community's opinion. Yeah. So now, I coming out with a very provocative type of title.
It is it gets the attention.
It does. And it's like, well, if go big or go home, right?
I love it. I think it's a really great risk that you took, and I'm glad you did. I want to take you back to that 6th grader. What do you think she would think of the woman that you've become?
I think I heard her say that. Wow.
Yeah.
I think she would be very, very proud, very surprised. I would hope that she would be very proud and surprised. Yeah. I feel her every now and then. She's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like every stage of my life. They're all in there.
Yeah, they are.
They're all in there.
That's so true. Last one.
Okay.
How do you want to be remembered?
My whole life, one of the titles that I was most proud of when I was in Chamber of Commerce work was change maker. And I think that through all of the careers I've had, whether it be in the Chamber of Commerce, in nonprofits, in government, and now as an author, that for me would be not just change for change's sake, but change for positive impact.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think you nailed it.
Time will tell.
I think you did. I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited about what's happening on July 1st at the City Opera House. For those who can't attend, how can they get your book?
There's a website on there. You can go to my website,
flippingbitchswitch.com.
Absolutely. Okay. And there's an opportunity to take orders on there.
Awesome.
And then of course, at the Opera House, there'll be the opportunity, we'll be selling books there as well.
And
then
can I get the switch too?
You know what? I will bring some switches. I want one
of those switches.
Yes, you can absolutely order them online as well.
So flippingbitchswitch.com. And you mentioned that part of the proceeds from the event. Where is that? What's happening?
So Zonta International, I should say Zonta, our district, because Zonta International is made up of a variety of different districts across the globe, actually. And so our new district governor is going to be joining us Wednesday night.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to be making a $500 donation to Zonta for their Zonta USA, which is the efforts to engage and support that ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Amazing. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It's just been a real pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for being so vulnerable and for bringing us this incredible book. Deborah Barry Allen's new book is Flipping the Bitch Switch, and she'll be celebrating its launch with a special event at the City Opera House on July 1st. The evening includes a conversation about the book, about leadership, resilience, and personal growth. And this has been Currently the Conversation, brought to you by TVC Cherry Capital Airport, your Northern Michigan connection. I'm Christal Frost, and we'll see you next time.